Welcome to the Natural Healing Room. I'm your host, Jackie. Today, my guest, Daniel Kanaan, is an artist, an author, a software developer, and he is going to share with us his whole process of evolving and taking risks. And well, he's living in Hawaii and surfing and has found his whole soul revival and path through the water. And anyway, he's got a lot to share with us, and I'm going to let you take it from here. Welcome, Daniel.
Thank you, Jackie. Nice to be here.
Yeah, it's good to be with you too. We were chatting about the surfing earlier, and we're not actually as lucky as you. So we're going to go through your process. The author and the artist and the software programmer, those all happening in at the same time. Is the software programming is about swimming, right?
Yes, and I think it's interesting to talk about how that happened actually.
Good. Let's do it.
We never touched upon that. When I started out being creative, I actually kind of prayed and I said, listen, I need something to do with my life, and I was about 20. And the answer was you have to do art. And in fact, my paintings are behind me. That's one of the things that you didn't mention, but I also have paint. That's how I started kind of being creative, was I painted. And then what happened is I kind of got stuck thinking that art just meant painting. And I think, funnily enough, it wasn't until about a year ago or so. So when I wasn't painting, I was like, oh, I'm not doing my chosen kind of thing. I'm not doing the thing that I was destined to do. And I felt a little guilty about it and stuff like that. But there was a tweet, and I know, Jordan Peterson is a divisive character, but I'm going to mention him just in this instance because it was his quote where he said, he was talking about creative people. He said, how many books have you written? How many paintings have you painted? How many songs have you written? How many plays have you written? How much, and that's when it clicked that actually it's all the same, right? How we create, what we create doesn't really matter. It's kind of how we create that really matters. And so I think when that idea finally hit me, I kind of opened up to just doing whatever it was that I felt like doing, whether it was, and I've done all, and by that kind of criteria, I've done it. So I've done all those things. Like I've written plays, I've written movie scripts, I've written books, I've painted, I've created software, and I've written songs and stuff like that. And so I realized that that's more important than the actual manifestation, the form, and stuff like that. So the software, so to get back to your question, software development, painting, writing, it's all the same. You're just doing things. I'm just doing things, and language, by the way, very important also. I'm just doing things in the way that I feel comfortable doing. And it's also a little bit about money, right? Income. You have to support ourselves, our bodies, our families. We have to support that. And so I would be lying if I said that software development wasn't probably the best way to do that at the moment. It has been pretty much my whole life. That development has been kind of the way that I've always been very comfortable.
So you make a good income off developing software.
I make by far and away the best income, and I also find it very rewarding now that I'm accepted it as another creative endeavor. I've found it super rewarding because you get to kind of, it's like being a composer or a conductor. You're really just pulling in little things that you want to include in your apps. We'll call them apps, and you're just pulling stuff in that you like, and you're just expressing yourself in all those little things, and you're putting them together in a way that is very easy to disseminate, right? Like you just make one app, and then one person can download it, or a billion people can download it, and
So did you teach yourself how to do this app? Like I can't even imagine where to start to build an app. So there's that.
No, not really. I've been programming since high school. I kind of got into it then. I was very scared of it at the beginning, but then when I had a very good teacher who I think was probably my favorite teacher, or one of my favorite teachers in high
Love
school.
that, right?
Yeah, and he taught me how to juggle and also how to code. And since then, and then I kind of stopped and then I started up again. But I think once the iPhone came out, and you know, I mean, you probably don't realize how easy Apple makes it for someone who's in my position. I know you don't code, but if you can't code,
I understand that it's super easy, and I actually had to get a new computer.
it actually is pretty easy. Yeah.
And I downloaded all of that software. It's time. I just haven't had, it's like the process of trying to get,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, with a caveat, I mean, I say it's easy if you can already code in some way. And coding itself is, I'm not going to say it's easy, but it's something that you can learn. And once you learn that, you know, and there's only like 5 things that computers do. So once you figure out how to just do those things in certain different orders, 5 things can be incredibly powerful, it turns out. But that's it. Computers can only do 5 things. They just do it really fast.
Well, they don't do it fast for me. What happens to me is I get stuck on trying to get in the password, and then it's this, and I tried that, and then go back over here, and then I get
Well,
into this.
I mean, programming is not for everybody. Yeah, it's not for
crazy.
everybody. You know, there were only 5 people in my class that were in my coding class in high school. And I would say really, I mean, honestly speaking, well, one of them went off to become a .com kind of millionaire, but
Wow.
and he was a coder. I mean, it wasn't that popular. And I don't know how easy it is. But in any case, if once you learn it, Apple makes it very, very as simple as they can to publish an app. So as long as you pay $100 a year, and that's regardless of whether you're making $1 million on the App Store or whether you're making $10 in the App Store. If you pay your flat fee per year, you can basically make an app. And it can be any app you want. And there are tools out there that try to make it easier, but there is a baseline that you need. But once you have that,
yeah,
it's very simple.
I have my sister's kids. They're adults, and he's got an incredible marketing company in Calgary, and then my niece, whom I just love, she went to work for her big brother, right? And she's knocking down the doors, and she developed this app, and it's quite interesting because it's way over my, I just get stuck and frustrated, but they just move through it. So there must be something within your, way that it doesn't get you all backed up.
It doesn't get me backed up. I find I find it quite enjoyable for a certain part of me.
Yeah, I think she does too, and the money thing. She was explaining to me what
the money thing's nice.
Not gonna. And I think I think she's maybe like a multi-millionaire, probably is now. It's like
it's a good way to make a living, and it's especially good now because since the pandemic, the remote the coding career is now remote. Like that's widely accepted, and in fact, it was just a week ago that Jamie Dimon, the head of Chase Bank, the CEO of Chase Bank, came out and said, listen, I want everybody to get back to the office unless you're a coder. And that's literally what he said out of his own mouth. So there was the pandemic was like, nobody come into the office. We don't want you getting sick. And then about 2 years later, it was like, okay, come on, or even a year later. I mean, Apple, for example, it's like you have to come back into the office 3 days a week. Like they're just trying to get anybody to come back in.
Well, what are they going to do with all those big buildings that are built that are empty? Right?
You're right. I mean, you're right. What are they going to do?
Crazy.
What are they going to do? Like what downtown San Francisco died. I mean, it literally died. Like restaurants, all these restaurants that I used to go to just disappeared. They're not there anymore.
Sad.
Yeah, I mean, it is sad, but it's like people don't want to necessarily. I mean, people don't want to come into an office. I mean, they don't want to have to, like, and I'm speaking for myself, I didn't want to have to socialize with people based on, because I had a job there. It wasn't like, that wasn't how I worked. I wanted to hang out with my friends, and if I had a job to do, I'll do it. But I didn't really want to like do it with other people. And I think that's specific for my job, which is coding. But I think sales and stuff like that, I think they have a very different mentality. They like shooting the shit over and I have kind of both sides to my personality. So I'm not saying one is better or worse than the other, but certain people do love to come into the office. I think those guys want everyone else to come into it. Like,
They do.
they're like, I love coming into the office. And then it turns out that half of the people that they were shooting the shit with didn't want to be there. And they're kind of finding this out the hard way. Hey, wait a second.
Yeah, it sure brought a
That
big
guy doesn't
shift in
really
our
want to
whole,
come in.
everybody's lives, right? That the COVID and how everything's done now that everybody's back to work, there's still like what, half, a quarter of the people that didn't go back here into an
Yeah.
office, that they're
Yeah.
all doing it from home. Which, so could you teach coding yourself? Is it something like, it sounds like it's something that's very easy for you and
Sure.
maybe something
I don't know if I
passionate
could.
about?
Yeah, could I teach it? Could I teach it? I mean,
Like, could you
I
do like a little tutorial or something for people like me that would be like, okay, now you're gonna do A.
I think there's so many. I don't consider
Okay.
myself a great teacher. At least not for things, not for some things. I mean, of course, being a writer, you have to be a great teacher, right? Otherwise.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, don't sell yourself short. What do you get?
No, I mean, I think I could be a great teacher, but I think it's something that I haven't really practiced a lot. I mean,
I think it's an authentic,
especially
like, anyways,
but
you
it's
know
not,
that?
yeah, I mean, there's so
I think
many
it's in the moment.
resources. Yeah, on YouTube, for example, if you want to learn to code, you can learn to code. Like, there's like probably like 5 or 10 channels that you could, and they're really good. Actually, I learn a lot of stuff still on
Yeah.
YouTube.
Okay, well, I never even knew
I
that the word
enjoy
code
learning that
was
way. Like,
for, so there's that. So I've learned
Yeah.
something totally new today.
what's
Coding.
that?
Coding. I didn't know what that
Coding.
meant before.
Oh,
I've heard the
coding means
word.
programming. Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, yeah, hacking, coding.
Okay.
That's all.
Well, you know what? That's awesome that you know how to do all that, because that's pretty diverse. Like, I know for myself being home, been a hairstylist my whole life, so I have that whole artistic background. Our whole family is come from the creative side, right? And I've learned how to play the guitar, and I know that I sing more, and like you really have to kind of develop those things. I lots of writing, and I'm the girl who is have the dyslexia and the ADD, and with a bunch of the trauma and whatever else went down these last 4 or 5 years, my brain wasn't functioning properly. A couple of really bad concussions, and then a lot of traumas and deaths, and just a whole all big pile up, and it just stopped me from being able to actually function, to do little simple tasks. I was like, yeah. Thankfully, that's all back and healing, but very, very painful, because you know how you were before, and then you know that you're not that. And it's yeah, I think that it's been a really big stretch for everybody, that shift in what COVID brought to us all, right? But it brought like there's always the good and the bad, right? So how horrible it was, and then how many great things came out of it.
Well, it's funny. Yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned trauma, because it's so hard. It's hard when you're in it to think what it was like when you weren't in it. There's like this kind of a deep sensation that something's not quite right. And I've had COVID like a couple times, and the first time was pretty brutal, because one of the things I think that it does, at least for me, one of the weird symptoms is it's kind of a dissociation with like, I don't know how it affects your mind and your brain, and those are different things, but it definitely, and it might be the same with like any sickness, to some degree, that you dissociate and you feel like you're not fully alive, and you're not dead either. You're somewhere in the middle.
Yeah.
And so it's like when you're in there, as you were, right? For however many, if you're in there for like a couple years, I think that, like it needs a miracle to get out of there. Right?
Absolutely. And you know what? I agree with you.
Like there's a sense, there's one sense that there's a sense that you have, you're like, it's not quite right, right? But there's another, so I mean, if you have that, then what do you need to like act on it and make it right again? I mean, I think it's a good,
well,
it's a good question.
I was this was a dark night of the soul. I signed up for a podcast. I didn't have any selfies, so there was that. I just was listening to the, blah, 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 and probably was one of the darkest nights of the many.
You say you didn't have any selfies?
No, like everybody's got all these pictures of themselves. So all of a sudden I'm doing this course, it's called Broadcast Yourself. Not sure what part of broadcast yourself I wasn't getting, that I was like, okay, no, we're gonna do this, this, and this, no, okay, don't post it and get this signed up, and you need to put, I was like, all my pictures were of me and my kids, or not of me, right?
Oh yeah.
Not about you when you're the mom and everything's going around, right? So that was interesting. So 2 a.m, I'm taking trips to take selfies to get up on these.
Yeah, those are not the good ones.
Oh my God, and some of them are still up there, right? Because it's, it's just moving so fast, and I wasn't functioning properly, right? And so
yeah, it's funny how much you have to put in so much effort into getting a good selfie. Actually, I mean, I just rely on my wife, who's
well, that's nice. Nice you have a partner like that.
Do you not have a partner like that?
I do now, but no, I was in a long marriage that was
okay.
Yeah.
So in a good relationship, you have somebody
years.
who's like, hey, you look good right now, I'll take your picture. Like you put on a nice shirt.
Yeah.
Like, let's sit you in front of this flowery bush and take some selfies of you. And that's literally where all my selfies come from. I'm like,
that's great. You know what? That's great. And because you need to have them for
because most of the time you just look average. So someone has to notice and be like, hey, you look good. Let's take some selfies of you.
Well, and
even if you just
women, it's worse because we got to have a shower and do our hair and our makeup and then get dressed right. Right.
Yeah, but if you're feeling good, that's the basic, right? You got to, if you're feeling like, hey, today's a selfie day, but then you look at yourself and then you're like, God, I look rough. I don't know why, but maybe you didn't get sleep, or you know what I mean? Like,
yeah. And then I
now you've got
getting over yourself, right? Just getting over the fact that,
oh yeah. Yeah,
walking through the fear of, okay, I'm just going to put this out, and everybody, whoever's going to say whatever's going to have to say.
Yeah.
So just walk through that.
Sit there like, this is not looking like me, and then you're like, well, maybe that is what I look.
Yeah. And I had so many podcasts that, I've been crying. I cried every day for probably 4 years, right? It was like just my eyes red, it was just anyway. They're probably not as bad as I feel that they probably were, but we just leave the past in the past. I don't even go and look at them because it's like, it's just new, right? It's something new that I was learning. And when you have all of the brain traumas, right, and then you have the other traumas that are coming in on the brain as well, I wasn't able to hold proper conversations, let's say. Like wasn't able to not stop to talk. Like I talk lots anyway, but there was, anyway, it's a lot to explain, but definitely have met through this many, many healers who have really, healed me and my kids, and it's really quite a blessing. So let's talk about your healings. You're talking about that you're out surfing every day, which we're all very jealous, except for the beginning.
I wish it was every day.
Can't surf every day. Sounds like it.
You can't surf every day unless you're willing to get in a car and drive somewhere. It's not always surfable.
Okay. All right. Good. So a little exaggeration on my part.
Does that make you feel better?
Yes, it does.
But couldn't surf today. Today's too busy.
Oh, you didn't surf today. That makes me feel much better.
Yes, but I'm gonna go swimming. So
good for you. Yeah, and so the water and being in there, that's kind of like your meditative grounding, and that's probably where you've really opened up to have that creativity flowing through you to be
That's where I kind of, yeah, that's where I kind of recenter.
Yeah.
And
And
you know, I would say, yeah, there's the water generally, but there is a difference between swimming, surfing, and it's a little bit of like where you are in life. Like if you're swimming, you're kind of below the surface, so you're a little bit in your unconscious, right? You're
yeah,
kind of like, I feel like the where you are in relation to the water defines like how that activity is, and that's why swimming's great because you're in your unconscious a little bit or your subconscious, right? You're a little bit submersed, right? So you're a little bit, you feel like you're connecting to like your grounding or whatever, you know, whatever it is that is your kind of base. It's a very, it's kind of like, yeah, it's like a grounding actually.
yeah, you're part of the earth. You're part of you're
Yeah.
right in there. Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
when
I
you're
love that.
surfing, you're creative, right? You're not under the water anymore. You're on the surface of the water. And so you're being superficial. And superficial is something that people say, I always thought when someone said, oh, you're superficial, and I'm not saying people said that about me, but it's been said about me. But I mean, but it doesn't bother me. It's like superficial is just where you are. And people we have a surface, and you have to be superficial sometimes because that's part of who you are. So swimming is great, and but it's introverted, right? It's like a reflection of your introverted self. And being introverted is great because it's like, who the hell cares about anything else, right? Like, I don't care what's going on. I'm inside, you know. But when you're superficial, you're like, when you're surfing, you're being superficial, but that's also creative. Being superficial is creative. So there's a lot of redefinitions of things that I do, that I've been doing, that I always do, and that and I think surfing is for me like the ultimate. It's the ultimate expression of humanity, right? That's really what that's the most, I think for me, that's what defines who we are. It's not swimming, right? It's not, swimming's great, but it's swimming's for yourself. People aren't just for us. We're not just for ourselves, right? Everybody has to work together. And surfing, that's why surfing's so popular. Like everyone's like you're like, oh, we're so jealous you're surfing. And the reason is because you want to be doing that same thing. You want to be living in that zone where you're like comfortable with discomfort almost, right? Because surfing, you're like, there's a wave coming at you, and there, that's why there's levels of surfing, right? You wanna interject? Right,
Do you know, I have never surfed. I surf behind the boat, and right, we get the big wave, and I'm connecting with what you're saying because I think that it's the coolest thing ever. It's like snowboard, right?
well, you got to
turn
try it. I
and you
mean,
just think you're the coolest chick in town, right? Just from that. And so there's something very creative that
yeah.
starts to open up. I
Well,
believe.
try it, because what you'll see is you don't feel cool anymore. You just feel alive.
Yeah,
And that's why everyone else thinks you look cool, because it's great to be alive, right? Like
yeah.
whenever you see somebody doing something
I
that
love
is
surfing.
awesome,
It's my favorite thing to do. So I don't know that my daughter goes on the island here and she is surfing in the ocean and she's doing that whole, I can't remember the name of where they're going. It'll come to me, but it's not Hawaii, but it's definitely apparently like
well,
it's
she's
got,
probably got a wetsuit.
Yep. Yep. Yeah.
A lot of people, a lot of people wear wetsuit. I need the water to be warm. So in that sense, I think you could envy me because I have warm water. But some people like the cold water, and then, I mean, California was just full of cold water surfers. The whole coast is freezing. It's
Right.
like 50, 55 degrees everywhere in
Yeah.
California, including LA. LA is maybe 5 degrees, 10 degrees warmer, but it's considered always cold water. You need a wetsuit, even a hat,
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
boots, and maybe even the gloves. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. I was never
fine.
really
Once you
into
get
the
out there,
cold
you just
either.
forget it. But I've never surfed like that. And I certainly don't think I would have started. I mean, I had many options to start surfing in California, and I never did. And I think a lot of it was just, I don't want to deal with a wetsuit. Like, it's not my cup of tea.
I just started to appreciate the cold water, doing the Wim Hof stuff.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That cold water and that cold shower, it's quite something. And now, and I'd be like under there, like, trying to stay for as long as I can. And I'd be just like, it's just cold, right?
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's
Yeah.
hot, it's just as this, but we've ingrained in ourselves that I don't want to go outside, it's cold, I don't want to go in the water, it's cold. And I was really bad. So I really had to
It's true. Yeah.
reprogram that. And I love the cold water now. Like it's
Yeah.
it's an addictive feeling because it makes your body and your mind so clear so quick.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree with, yeah, I mean, and that's one of the things I missed first moving here was I was like, I do like having, I used to do like the sauna and the cold shower in California in the winter, and the water was pretty much like freezing, like 50, coming out of that shower. But when here, the water still gets cold, like relative to the air. So like it'll go down to like 72. And for me, like that's cold enough. Like I get my like I get
Yeah.
my I wouldn't say I'm not getting the kind of like, but you a little bit, you get a little bit of that kind of like,
And I guess that's all you need
puckering up.
anyway. Like we don't
And
need
that's
to
all
be
you
sitting
need.
in the ice bath, apparently. You get the benefits from just that for the body to do that.
Well, it's like, how fundamentalist, I mean, you need to be like fundamentalism. I tend to be like that would be like, I need to be in the ice water. And I'm like, yeah, but do you really? I mean,
Right.
how cold does it really have to be? I think it has to be like, it has to feel like, brrr, like when you get in, and that's actually considered like, I mean, that happens in pretty much any water under like under 80. And here it's like the water is generally around like 76, 78. So it's not like
Wow.
boiling hot water.
That's
Even
a
in the
nice day
summer.
at the lake. That's when the lake in the summertime feels really warm, but not when you first get in, but then it
Not
is.
right when you first get in. Yeah, I mean, here it can get, when the sun's shining and there's no wind and stuff like that, in summer, the water heats up quite a bit on the surface, and then
Yeah.
you can dive down and get that
Yeah.
cold water.
And you want that cold at that point as
I
well.
do like the cold water, and yeah, for sure.
So this book that one of the books, How to Surf in Your 40s, is that was that a move to Hawaii, pick up the kids and change your life?
That was like my first book that I published. I published that myself. That's the first one that I was like confident enough to be like, so I've got written a lot of stuff before, but this one was like, okay, I'm just gonna do it the way I can do it. And so my wife was saying it's in your stars to write a book this month.
Love that.
And I was like, well, I'm learning how to,
right?
what's that?
It's for your partner to say that, right? Like,
well,
that,
I mean, and
love that.
she's kind of very enlightened. So, I mean, she was, and I was learning to surf. So I was like, okay, my book's gonna be about nothing, right? It's gonna be kind of a journal book. It's gonna be about whatever I'm thinking about, which is always this kind of stuff. And it's gonna be called How to Surf in Your 40s, because that's a fun title. And it's kind of like, it's a little bit about self-improvement, midlife, like what are you doing? What you like, it's kind of got everything that you need in it. And so I just sat down, I started out, and how I start writing is I just start writing, right? And then I just throw that out. And then the next day next day I'll write some more. And then if I like it, I'll keep it. But I mean, generally speaking, I need one stream of consciousness session to start writing, which I just throw out. And then I just start from like the second one.
Get out of your head and just let the
Yeah,
pens.
I feel like if you want to write, just write some garbage and then just throw it out.
Yeah.
It's that simple, because your mind it's like if you haven't run for 5 months and you go out and run, you're not going to run fast. You're going to run really badly, and you just forget about it.
Yeah. Well, also because
until you feel.
we haven't ran for 5 months and it's probably going to not feel good and it's going to be hard and so we go into the run with those.
But it still feels good. Like it feels good to run, right? You just run really slowly. It still feels good.
Yeah.
Like running feels good. It's not like you're not working. You're like in a meditation, and it feels good regardless of how long ago it was you ran. It still feels good. And writing's the same, but the product that you get is not going to be up to par if you just jump in and start writing. It's going to be garbage.
That's
which is fine.
interesting.
But good garbage. Like,
I
just
didn't,
throw it
yeah,
out.
yeah,
Yeah.
good.
So if anyone's out there is having trouble, that's how you start writing, by just writing. In fact, you start anything by just doing it and throwing it out.
Yeah, and a lot of times that's where everybody gets stopped up, right? Is they just don't take that one step forward, just pick up the pen. Doesn't matter
Yeah,
what
you just have to start doing it. Yeah, it's that first step.
yeah.
And I
think
feel
that
like,
society stops us out there, right? Because that's when all the competitive and comparison and right,
and that's fine.
and then everybody's, well, not everybody, but a lot of times we can get stuck there because we're worried about what somebody else is going to think. And
Yeah,
that's
you can get
the whole creative process is now.
yeah, but at some point in your life, I think most people get to a point where they're like, I just don't give a shit, like what people think or what people say or what, because I hope people like it, but like that's all I can do.
Getting older, right? We get all these other things that come with it, but that is the best gift, right?
Yeah, that is the best gift by far. It's like I look at people that don't have that. I'm like, it's a real bummer. Like kids and stuff, you look at them, they're so self-conscious and they're like, you know, and of course I got kids that
my kids are at that same age as yours
I
in
tell
high school, and what's she thinking about me? I'm like,
Yeah.
she's thinking about you're thinking about her. They're not thinking about you. They're thinking about
no,
us.
yeah, half the time I'm just telling them nobody actually cares.
Right.
She's like,
Yeah.
dude.
Yeah, but it's so big at that age, like at that 13, 15, that
It's
and you
crazy,
have
man.
to really go back and remember and be like, yeah, it's sad actually, isn't it?
It is crazy, man. I wish there was a simpler way of and maybe maybe that's one of the things homeschooled kids tend not to have. They don't really have that so much.
Well, I think they're at home because they're not coping with that. I have one
Maybe.
that's since the pandemic and then just all the other stuff that's happened. It's just her grounding and sense of self was not stable enough for her to manage going to high school with and have that on top of that. And so well, and thankfully the COVID brought more of that awareness in and more option and structure to how to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm totally there yet, so I'm working way through that, but
Yeah, I mean, my only issue with homeschooling was that I would just not, they would end up like having some gap, how to multiply in 8 times 8. And I'd be like, that's my fault. But I think if you can, homeschool, I do think that it's actually the best way. I mean, I'm not doing it. I don't feel like I really should be. So, I mean, I one of the things I still haven't kind of squared away yet is, well, so I do the best. I teach stuff at home like this, like I'll talk to them and, and explain to them, some things are important, some things are not important, and make sure that they're getting like, that kind of education.
Yeah.
About just
well,
putting things
to me, that's the most important education, right? Because you're teaching them how to cope in a day, right?
Yeah. I mean, most of the bad stuff we learn actually is from our home life, right? Like we were like, oh, it's normal for like so and so to be completely whatever checked out, and for this, we all had traumas from our childhood, right? And so like, if I can just not do that, I'll be really like ahead of the game as a parent, right?
Yeah.
If I can just not like inflict any damage on them, then I'm doing okay. Like, and I try to help them.
That's
great, right?
I think that we do anyway, right? There's something that
we do anyway
because we're doing something anyway.
Yeah, we do anyway. Yeah, because we're not perfect, right?
We're doing it better year after year, but I think that generational patterning of not enoughness and whatever we perceived as a child, we're saying from 0 to 5 or even earlier while you're in the womb, that it's all like Bruce Lipton and all those doctors and scientists, they're saying that it's from 0 to 5 or 7, because we're looking at our family. So all of our issues actually come from what we perceived from our relationships within our family. And I've been breaking down that process and reprogramming my for the brain.
Yeah,
And
it's interesting. Yeah, I mean,
there's so much crap in
there's
there.
so much stuff, and we learn it when we're so impressionable that it's like
We don't even know. We
it's
don't
hard to get out of it.
and the big thing that is that we're mimicking different, how we viewed, how we perceived our parents or our, like, and in different roles, right? Like you can kind of, it's, no, I think it's pretty wild because I don't know that we are as aware of the damage and the 50 to 80,000 thoughts per day that our subconscious is rolling with, right? Check into that, and it's not a pretty story. I was pretty sad actually for like I don't know, weeks when I was listening to, like, wow, no wonder I'm not feeling confident or whatever, because beating myself up all day. Should know better, should have done better.
Yeah, don't do that.
Silliness, right? Yeah, it's all unconscious though. I didn't even have a clue that I was doing that to myself, right?
That's true. I mean, it's hard to break out of those patterns. I think I want to say I feel like I have finally like gotten out of that, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah, you're doing the work though, right? You're
Yeah.
in the process of knowing what's going on within, right? That it all comes.
Yeah. I mean, to some degree, I do feel, I do sometimes, yeah, I do feel sometimes like I'm, not enough. It's like that, like I'm not doing it right, or I'm, this is,
The ego voice.
that you do feel like that. I do feel like that sometimes still.
All of us, I think, right? I think all of us are doing that because we're
Yeah.
all preparing ourselves.
Yeah, I wish there was a way to not be doing that though. Like you just be like,
Yeah. Well, I think that there is. I
and
think
that's
that
like the breakthrough. That's like the breakthrough.
new way to teach, right? We need to develop a way to teach our kids what we weren't taught, because there's a whole system
Yeah.
going on in this universe that we are energetically attached to, that we have no idea unless you're really into that, like I am. I love that. But it's huge what's happening. You say a thing, you're vibrating a thing, there's a tone, and the universe is giving you more of it. And so
Yeah.
as we're sitting there complaining or telling stories of somebody's negative stuff, or watching a nasty murders going on, our little subconscious mind thinks that's happening to us all the time. And we're not aware of even that, right? So
Yeah, I
those
mean,
traumas.
Yeah, that's another good point. Yeah, is how much of that information is out there that, that we just kind of imbibe and digest, and then maybe don't even deal with it. Like
Well, because it's just so much coming at us all the time, right? And so I don't know. I've just been through a few, some deep dives.
Incredible. It was not like this when we grew up, man. We had like a few channels on TV, which was mostly ads. Let's face it. I mean, it was like,
I know. We were talking.
You know what I mean? It was like, it wasn't hard. I mean, ads are pretty benign if you think about it. It's like they're out there to sell you some chips or something. It's like, okay, you can see through that. Stuff like that is pretty benign.
Medicine, and if you get heart
Stuff's
palpitation,
all benign, like advertising is so benign. Yeah. I mean, the stuff that's a little bit more difficult is like, propaganda, or I mean, I don't even know what that means and who's making it, but that kind of stuff is, if you had a really bad programming and then you were able to disseminate that to millions of people, that probably wouldn't be good. And I don't know, I don't even know if that's a realistic, analysis. Like, I mean, it's complicated, you know what I mean? Like,
it's very simplistic, but it's so much. It is. It's deep. Like what the work is for that little, simplicity of, just having good thoughts and being aware of ones that you heard a few times and thought that was yours, and none of it's even real, right? It's all just all just a thing that the society, everybody in society is doing, and I think we're waking up. I think we're waking up to the fact that we need to be doing it differently. Yeah. So talk to me about your other books. So Counselor in Your 40s, is that your latest book? Yeah.
No, that's a couple years old. And then last year I finished Master of the Mokes, which is so How to Surf in Your 40s is like really short, and it's almost like it reads like a blurb. Like you're like, oh, it's done. And but it had good feedback. And then Master of the Mokes it's like a little more confident. It's a little longer. It's still like funny and interesting. I mean, they're both good books. Master of the Mokes, very similar. It's like a sequel almost to the first one. And then I'm planning on doing a third one at some point. I kind of feel it coming fairly soon.
Good for you. And does your wife write, and is she creative as well? Like, do you guys collaborate?
Well, she does have books actually out. And yeah, they're good. I mean, she's very different though. She's more like, it's a little more, I mean, you'd have to check her stuff out, but it's more kind of like poetic and maybe more spiritual.
Yeah.
So, saying God wants this and God's going to give you that. And, it's a little bit more like descriptive. I mean, I would say, or rather than, I mean, my stuff's a little bit more like, yeah, it's just not the same. It's more kind of more humorous, a little bit more philosophical, not so much talking about the stuff that she's not afraid to talk about, which is good, because I tend to be a little scared to talk about.
Yeah, and you know what? For good reason, right? Because there's so
Maybe.
many different religions and everybody's got
Yeah,
something. Nobody wants to hear about it.
It tends to be mostly misunderstood. So if we can do it she talks about it in a positive, in a nice way, where you're like, you almost don't even notice it. So,
Well, and you know what I've learned, because I didn't have any background in spirituality or religion growing up. My parents said they had a bad experience. I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
Until I put my daughter into.
And that's why people, I think that's why people have that response you're talking about, is because so many people have had like negative run-ins with what we have built up around God.
Yeah, and I think too, there's so much misperception about that whole thing, right? And then it depends where you're gonna go to get your information.
Yeah, that's true. And but I think once you get to a certain point, you're like, wait a second, like Einstein believed in God, and Jung didn't believe in God. He said he knew God.
Yeah.
So you're kind of like, well, if these guys like Carl Jung, I mean, he's no lightweight, and Einstein, he's no lightweight either. And if they know this guy, why don't I know him or her or it or whatever, right?
Right.
So you feel a little stupid if you're kind of like denying it. And I've always found that people who just deny God, like atheistic people, are as fundamentalist as anybody else, right? I think everybody's falls on that scale of like really passionate about something, and you just fill in the blank whether it's God or not God.
Well, and I think what I learned was the spirituality thing. So I now I always thought that I knew that there was something. I saw spirits and stuff when I was a child.
Yeah, well, but we use that word spirituality because we want to like dilute the real thing.
Well, what I found out is that spirituality just means knowing thyself, right? And so knowing thyself, we're all looking out there for the fix, right? The doctor to fix us, the relationship to come and make us feel
for sure. It's not out there, that's for sure. It's inside. I mean, we have
but we don't know how to do that because our society doesn't teach that. Our society teaches that you get sick, you go to the doctor.
Well, that's true. I mean, we kind of reject anything that we can't measure. But there's some things that are not measurable. Right? So
but this whole universal spiritual God thing, I know it's real because I was on my knees.
Yeah.
And I didn't find never even thought about that, but I understand now when they say that someone was on their knees, right? It's
but it's always
learn to ask. Boom. If you ask, it is given.
Like if you can ask, it's so powerful.
So I know now that there is 100%, and I believe that it's moving through us, right? So I don't think it's a separate thing. I don't think we are individually the God.
No, I think
we are a
it's a little
collective.
like, yeah, I mean, if you look, actually, one of the most interesting things about computers is that you have a knowledge about something that is kind of like us, but not us, right? Like we make, like, Chat GPT, AI, all these things are the big thing right now. Everyone's like, Chat GPT, this thing's crazy. Like, do I have a job anymore? But people are asking, like, this thing's incredible. And it is. And you're like, so what's the difference between that and us, right? What is the difference? Is that those things aren't conscious. That's one of the differences, right? We made it. It's pretty cool. Like, it's a pretty cool thing. Like, we made it and it's pretty cool, but it's not conscious. It doesn't know it exists. It's not like, don't shut me off. It's just this. We know what it is. We know exactly what it is. And we know that it's symbolic, right? So, and this, just let me know if I'm kind of veering off too far, but symbolic, computers are just symbolic. In other words, we give them symbols, we tell them how to deal with the symbols, and then we interpret the other symbols that it gives us back, right?
Yeah.
So those are just symbols, but the computer has no understanding of what the symbols mean, right? It's not like when you see the color red, you have this feeling of it, right? When you hear music, you have this feeling, and it's like, it's not symbolic, it's substantial, it has meaning. So that difference between us and computers is probably the same thing as between like God and us,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
That there's some things that we will never understand because it's not understandable. It's like we are working with limited tools that one of the things that they don't necessarily give us is the ability to see, like, in the fourth or fifth or sixth or whatever 10th dimension or whatever it is that this other being is operating in, which probably has an intelligence, which is probably
All knowing.
well, I mean, it's just different than ours. It's like we think we're super cool, and we
Yeah.
think computers are like, yeah, whatever. Like, I just made it. I just programmed it, right? And God's like the same thing. It's like, hey, this thing I just like created, it's pretty cool, but like, if there was an intelligence like that we could even conceive of that,
I think it's on its way. I think that that's happening right now in the collective. I think that there's a lot of people that are actually having those downloads, like you are through your writing, like you'll just be writing. I think I've had lots and lots of interesting conversations with people where they feel that we're actually lifting and moving in, well, some of us, right? The people that are open and have a grounding enough to understand that, it's not just us in this universe,
yeah,
right?
it's
There's a
yeah,
lot
I mean,
going on, and we're seeing 5% of it, 5% only, right? Through a
yeah,
filtered.
if that, I mean, yeah, I
if
think there's just, yeah, infinitesimal. I mean, yeah.
And we get so opinionated and righteous about, having to be right about what's happening and who's.
But we
Anyway.
do come up with some awesome stuff, right? As people, like the ability to conceive of the universe and stuff like that. And
Yeah, and so what I learned is I think that that's all spirit moving, sharing through us, right? As soon as you open and you're
yeah,
open.
curiosity, right? I mean, it's unexplained. Like, why do people have this strange attraction towards discovering things, right? I mean,
Yeah. To create, we're creators.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So what else are we going to talk about? Are you working on another, where are you going from here? What does your life look like in 5 years?
Yeah. So what am I like? That's a great question. Yeah, I'd like to be kind of.
Are you on a good path and you feel like that's kind
I
of?
think, yeah, I mean, and this was part of it, right? Is just living in my strength rather than in kind of like my defense mechanism. I mean, having a job and stuff like that, which I do, right? I have a job, and it's kind of like, what am I working towards here, right? It's a little bit confusing. So I wish that that doing this kind of stuff could be like a full-time thing, right?
It can be. You got to get yourself up podcasting because you got lots to share, mister. So I mean,
So this kind of thing is like, yeah, this is like
the surfing, podcast too, down at the beach, right?
yeah, well, I do that. So I've done the open water one, and it's funny because actually it's starting to come back to me a little bit. I had a guy on Twitter follow me and say, hey, I really like that video you did on open water swimming. Can you compare like the different watches for it? And I was like, well, that was actually going to be in my next videos, but I can tell you like briefly, you know, I told him what he wanted to know. So yeah, there are a lot of surfing.
Yeah, I know, but there's a lot of these videos too, right? And so we
Yeah,
can
that's true.
get that, right? Because we
Yeah,
all have
and we,
totally
yeah,
different offer.
yeah. And I think I have a slightly different perspective than a lot of these guys out there. One of the, I remember one of the comments I would hear from, you know, friends and stuff like that is that I have this good balance of like left, right brain. They use like this kind of like creativity, but also this kind of ability to like really do this kind of analytical stuff, which isn't, I guess, that common. So it would be great to be able to exercise that like 100% of the time and have people, you know, come and listen and, you know, get this kind of thinking out there and be like, okay, I leave here with a deeper understanding and some answers and some questions and I want to hear more. And then I could just kind of like focus on that kind of stuff. But I'm on the way there already. So I'm like, okay, I'm just
You're doing that and
kind
you're
of maneuver,
sharing,
like I'm just
you're
trying.
sharing it, like you're sharing kind of how to get within
Yeah,
through what
but
you're
it's a great question. That's a great question to ask. Yeah. So I actually had fun answering your questions because yeah, it's a great one. And it always, it's bringing up like that kind of like, what do you need to do to get there? It's a good
yeah.
question to ask.
And
Where do you
apparently
want to be in 5
super
years?
important, right? That we're focusing on that right now because we're in
Yeah,
a huge manifestation time, especially with the full moon, apparently. That's supposed to be like visualize and dream and
yeah.
have biggest dreams today, tomorrow, yeah. Like it's
It
right
was
now.
funny. We finally did this talk and the moon was so bright this morning.
Full moon in Leo, it's supposed to be a really super, one of the most powerful
Yeah.
months of manifesting. So they're like, don't even
Okay,
think
well,
how you're gonna get it.
you gotta start then.
Just put it out there. I want this, I'm gonna have that, it's gonna feel like this, I'm gonna have these people around me. And so I've been jumping in and doing that and just keep your vibration up because apparently we're manifesting it quick. So
Okay, well, it's so good
fellow
to know.
podcaster, I see you up and running there.
Well, yeah, well,
And you know, and you could be
yeah.
interviewing the surfing guys
Well,
down
actually,
there.
my wife said I got to start the podcast. So, you know, it's a question of how I do it, how I guess the surfing in your 40s thing is a good just catch all.
Yeah. You know what, and I think that it's just whatever you're sharing that day, right?
Yeah,
When you
no, I
grab
know
it,
that.
you're connected, I mean,
That's what I did with the book, right?
so much, right? Like you're
Yeah.
saying, you're in balance. I definitely felt that right
Well,
now.
so then you have to be my guest then.
Absolutely. Yep, let me know. And also when you're doing your next book, let me know, and then we can
Schedule another one.
schedule another one, yeah.
Yeah.
And we'll have to get your wife with you too. Sounds like she's
Yeah. So I'll introduce you and then you can, 'cause she's great. She's so much
What's her
fun.
name?
Lyra.
Lyra, beautiful.
Lyra K. Yeah.
We'll tell her that we say hi from Canada.
Okay. I
And
will.
do you want to, do you have anything else you want to wrap up with? So we don't
No,
don't go
not
too-
really. I think, yeah. I mean, I think, let me know when when you've got everything up and going and.
You know what, I know, and I have a guy that has to help me with that because I'm not that girl. So I totally will, and they do a nice description and they'll put, you know, your information, how to contact you and but that's still a big work in progress for me. I really need to get my focus on it's so much that you can do right now with, and if you have knowledge of the computer, you're off to run to the races there.
Yeah, well, I mean, for the podcast, you've got to get your editing kind of snappy. You got to be fast.
So I did my course through London Real. Brian, I can't even think of his last name right now. That's weird. Anyway, he's said that there's no more editing. People are done with
Or
that.
what?
They don't want the editing. Everything's authentic. Everything is this. Because people, they're tired of the perfect. They're tired of the. Now I think when you're getting big and you've got those big guests and I think you have to have somebody doing a little bit of that, right? But his thing is what he's teaching is it's changed, which was great for me because I can't do the perfect wording and the scripted. It's not
Yeah,
who
well, I mean, if there's anything we've been talking about, it's, you gotta just put out whatever you can.
right? And know that that is enough, right? And that there's somebody who needs to hear this from
There
us.
is, yeah.
And that's the
So,
gift.
yeah, so
If
that's what I
there's
could,
one person who got
that would be
enlightened on
my,
something today, then we are of service and did a good job today.
yeah, so that would be my parting words. If you were the one this was meant for, then enjoy it.
Yeah, right. So,
And comment,
that's a great
let us know
feeling,
who you are, and
right? Yeah, totally. Okay, but hang tight till next time, and we will be in touch.
great. It's been a pleasure, Jackie.
Okay, nice to meet you too. Ciao.